Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at the Chicago Treasurer's Office. We have a wonderful webinar for you tonight on mental wealth. My name is Benji Wax. I'm Integrated Marketing Communications Manager here at the City Treasurer's Office, and we are super excited to bring you this information free, direct to your home, your phone, your couch, wherever you happen to be watching from. On tonight's session, we're going to be talking about mental wealth, and we'll hear a little bit more of a deep explanation of that from one of our guests, Micah Coleman, who is a licensed clinical professional counselor from TMH Behavioral Services, and we'll hear a little bit later from Devontae Montgomery, who is a senior financial education specialist at MSU Federal Credit Union. So first up, we would like to bring up Micah Coleman and hear a little bit more about her org and tonight's topic. Micah, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be talking about mental health and finances. And so again, my name is Micah Coleman. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor at TMH Behavioral Services. And TMH Behavioral Services provides counseling services and more to individuals of Illinois within the Chicagoland area and beyond. So managing financial anxiety is something that I have really been working on for the last couple of years as far as providing workshops to the community. So I'm so glad to be here today to speak on this because it is an important topic that goes across socioeconomic lines. So when we're looking at money is a tool, right? But anxiety often convinces us that it's our identity. So when we're talking about mental health, we often think about depression, trauma, or relationships. But the biggest contributor to anxiety is finances. Financial anxiety isn't always about how much money you have. I worked with people that have a lot of money to those who may not have as much. And so with seeing the various stress that comes from finances, I've noticed that very little experience peace because they have a plan, right? So it's important for us to talk about where this financial anxiety comes from. And one of the first things that I would ask you all to do is kind of take a few seconds to think about your first money memory. And so when we talk about money memories, we're talking about your childhood. What did you learn from your family or otherwise about money? Did you hear things like money doesn't grow on trees? Did you hear things like don't ask because we don't have it, or we're broke? There are a number of things that you could have heard that contribute to not only your first money memory, but your first money belief. So again, going back to financial anxiety, it sounds like, what if I can't pay my bills? What if I lose my job? I might be one emergency away from falling apart. Everyone seems to be doing better than me. Our brains are wired to detect threats. So when money feels uncertain, our nervous system begins to respond in a way that it would if it had come in contact with a physical danger. So if you think about that flight or fight that often one experiences when they're faced with danger, your body can begin to go through that once it experiences a financial stress. So what happens in your body? Financial stress can lead to difficulty sleeping, racing thoughts, irritability, anger, frustration, fatigue. Some may experience difficulty concentrating on things, emotional eating, or even the loss of appetite, avoiding bills or looking at your bank account, right? So these are just some of the many experiences that your body can go through as you're experiencing the financial stress, the financial anxiety. So when people think I'm bad with money, It's not that they're bad with money. They may just be overwhelmed by the anxiety. So there are some ways that I would like to talk to you about managing financial anxiety, right? And there are 4 ways in particular that I would like to just quickly go over with you. And one would be separating fact from fear. So what I like to say when I'm working with clients is put your thoughts on trial, right? So this is you asking yourself, what do I know to be true today? Right? This is not about what might happen, or this is not about what you're afraid of, but what is true. Maybe your truth is really, I have enough money for today. Maybe your truth is, I have options. Maybe your truth is, I've experienced difficult seasons before and I survived. So keep that in mind, right? You want to focus on what is true and not what might happen. So anxiety predicts catastrophe while wisdom looks at facts. So we want to work with wisdom. Keeping in mind, I understand that life situation and circumstances can have us believe that, our situation is bad, and it may be. But we want to also focus on facts and gratitude, right? And number 2 would be, what can you control? So focusing on the areas that you can control. What you can't control is inflation, interest rates, layoffs, or unexpected expenses. But what you can control is how you create a budget, how you track your spending, asking people for help. You may not want to, but be thinking about people that you could go to if there was a need for help, applying for assistance, updating your resume, learning a new skill, having difficult conversations about finances. That can be challenging, but every little step you take tells your nervous system, I'm not powerless. And so you have power. And I want you to be reminded of that today. Every little step towards financial security puts you in a better space, better situation. So action actually reduces anxiety. So again, it's about taking steps, no matter how big or how small. Don't minimize the actions that you are taking. Number 3 would be to stop comparing your financial journey. Comparison creates so much pressure that is unnecessary. Social media is one of the biggest platforms that can cause this comparison trap, right? So social media is rarely showing people experiencing issues with debt, credit card balances, financial mistakes, marital stress, the need for second jobs. I can go on and on. What we're seeing is the glitz and glams, right? The next big purchase, things of that nature. Don't get caught up, because we're not seeing the behind the scenes, right? We're not seeing what a person had to go through to get whatever it was that they may be showing, right? But comparison says they're ahead. Focusing on gratitude says I'm making progress. So working to run your own race, staying your own lane, and not compare yourself with the Joneses. Okay. The next thing that I would say, number 4, would be build a financial coping plan. So just like you make safety plans for other situation, other crises that may come up, you should make plans for the financial stress that you can experience. So asking yourself, who is the person that I can call if I'm experiencing a financial crisis? Maybe it's not asking them for money, but someone that you could call that can be that ear. Then I want you to think about in your plan, what expenses can you reduce? What resources are available to you? And what is my emergency plan? A plan creates confidence. And if you have the confidence, you feel secure in your financial situation and that you can overcome this crisis. The next thing that I want to add to your plan would be coming up with or having a grounding exercise. So the next time you experience some financial anxiety, pause, take a deep breath, a slow breath, and then ask yourself a couple of questions. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What evidence supports that thought that I have? What is one thing I can do today to change my situation? Not next month, not next year, but today. Small steps calm anxious minds. Mental health shift, right? Again, putting your thoughts on trial, focusing on changing your thoughts, more positive thoughts. So that is the mental wealth shift. So instead of saying, I'll never get ahead, try saying, I'm taking one faithful step at a time. Instead of saying, I'm failing, say, I'm learning new financial habits. Instead of, I'm stuck, simply say, this season is temporary. Our words have power and our words shape our mindset. So it's important to challenge those thoughts when you have them. So, in closing, what I would say to you is that financial peace doesn't always come from having more money, it often comes from having a plan, healthy habits, a wise support system, having realistic expectations, and hope. So remember, when your bank account is simply a snapshot of a moment in time. It's not a measure of your value. So you may be experiencing some financial pressure, but you're not defined by your financial circumstances. Mental wealth begins when you recognize that while money impacts our lives, it does not determine your worth, our worth. So every intentional step toward financial wellness is also a step toward emotional wellness. Thank you. I am so glad to have been able to speak to you today, and stay on. You're going to hear some great tips, some more information that will be beneficial to you in your mental wealth walk. Thank you again. My name is Micah Coleman, and I am a licensed clinical professional counselor from TMH Behavioral Services.
Micah, thank you so much for joining us today. That was very insightful in the wisdom. We appreciate you. And we're excited now to bring up Devontae Montgomery, our Senior Financial Education Specialist from MSU Federal Credit Union. Devontae, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you, Benji. I'm super excited to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Devontae Montgomery, and I work for MSU Federal Credit Union. So MSU Federal Credit Union is a credit union that is all about helping our members in our community to build their dreams. And so whether that's offering good price financial products or that's offering different levels of financial education. The financial education at MSU FCU is always free, so we so appreciate being able to talk to our community. And my name, Devontae Montgomery, being a senior financial education specialist means that I get the esteemed opportunity to go out into the communities that we serve to talk through different financial education, financial literacy pieces. And I am going to talk on one of my favorite ones this evening, which is really that connection of wealth and well-being. Oftentimes, we may not always think about how our experiences directly impact how we deal with finances. So let's go ahead and get into that. First things first, I want to kind of get you in the frame of mind. I think that Micah did such an exceptional job of talking to us about that mental wealth and understanding that. So, with that in mind, I want you to think about the word finances or money, whatever word you connect with more. And so, when you think about that word, what are the emotions that come to mind for you? What comes up? And as we think about what emotion we have that's connected to money, assign it a color. And so the reason that I like to do this activity is because it gets us kind of in that frame of mind of what is my current relationship with finances or money? What do I currently think about it? How do I feel? Right. And so one of the things that we also love to do is to do lots of surveying to the community. So we've asked people within our different communities, what is their connection to money? What is that emotion? And so let's go ahead and look at that. These are some of the responses that we received from some of those focus groups and surveys. Red for stress, green for confidence, green for happiness. We have stability, we have discouragement, regret, powerless, anxiety, doubt, fear, uneasiness, wealth, and even control. So, as you can see, it's a large myriad of different emotions listed on this slide. But this also draws into understanding that many of us have similarities. Many of us feel the same about finances, even though we may have different experiences, right? So it creates connectedness, but also helps us to understand that it's okay. And the reality is that these emotions connected to finances don't have a socioeconomic class. So they don't have like, if I don't have necessarily all the access to money, then, I'm just always going to feel this particular way. But it really is about mindset. So let's talk about how these emotions can then affect our decision making. First things first is going to be stress and anxiety. And stress and anxiety can often result in irrational decisions. So when we think about stress and anxiety, really they fill up our brain capacity. So it doesn't give us a lot of room to think through everything, really making the body prepare for that fight or flight response, also releasing that adrenaline. And so all of these reactions happening can cause us to make those irrational decisions. I want you to think about the last time you remember feeling a lot of stress and anxiety and you had to make a decision. Like, do you think that you thought through all the possible decisions that you could have made? For me, I know that when I'm feeling that, I definitely have to have a bit of mindfulness and groundedness in myself in order to make a really, really good decision, because I don't want to make that irrational decision. But again, things do happen, but it's important to know that that could be causing that. Fear and worry could lead to financial avoidance. When we think about financial avoidance, that may be, hey, I don't want to look at the mail to see what that balance is. I don't want to look at my email. I don't want to answer that call, so I'm just going to avoid it. And so I know that as we talk through this information, sometimes we could even start to feel emotions ourselves just listening to this information. So if you are having that, that's okay. Just kind of breathe through it and just continue on with me. But with that fear and worry, that financial avoidance can start to cause an even greater issue with us financially, because if we aren't looking at those things that are necessary to look at, bills and whatnot, to know where we are at, to know what plan we can put forth for ourselves, then that can start to create that cycle of kind of just being in this limbo financially, not necessarily knowing what's going on. And then financial avoidance can cause more bills and even more anxiety. So one thing that I love is when we can move into that point of having that empowerment and calmness, and this aids in that financial judgment. Now, empowerment and calmness doesn't just fall out the sky, right? It takes intentional work. One of those pieces of work it takes is gaining enough financial knowledge that we feel knowledgeable about the decisions that we have to make for ourselves. When we feel knowledgeable and we feel empowered when we're making those decisions, then we can feel like, hey, that was something that was really solid. That was a good decision for me to make because I thought about all of the other things, all of the other decisions that were out there. But again, that comes with that empowerment and calmness. And so let's talk about really how do we get to the point that maybe we're starting to deal with some of those, or that we have these emotions as it's related to finances. And these are those influences that impact our money perspective. So first we have financial education. What type of knowledge have we received? Um, you know, most places, most states within the United States do not have any sort of requirement that students learn about financial education. So the onus is really left up to the individuals that are helping to raise us, or the individuals that has raised us, or if we are raising other people, then it's left up to us. And so, what type of financial education can we impart? And then we look at society. So, society is really looking at the system, whether that be wage gaps, socioeconomic traps, that idea of keeping up with the Joneses. Because, like Micah talked about, as far as social media goes, it can be a wonderful experience, but it can also be very detrimental for our mental health, and definitely detrimental for our money perspective. What is it that we see with society? Usually social status being that level of, or seeing a outward amount of success. But again, we don't know all that a person may be going through. Are they telling the truth, or are they just creating a facade? Or what did it take for them to get to that particular point? So society definitely impacts that money perspective. And then we have family and friends. So this is observed behaviors, and observations gained from upbringing, whether it be good or bad. Micah brought up a couple of those ones that we often hear, do you have McDonald's money? Money doesn't grow on trees. And those statements say a whole lot without explaining anything. And so growing up, I always observed that my grandmother, we would go to the mall on the weekends while my mom and I didn't go to the mall. And so grandma had two jobs. So in my head, I had to have two jobs in order to live this life that my grandmother lived. Now, as an adult, I recognize that my grandma had a shopping problem and she liked to shop a lot. So that's why she had to work two jobs. But I didn't know that. Just in my youth of my mind, I was just like, oh, then that's what I have to do. So we have all of these money perspectives, and that, or we have all these influences that gets us to our money perspective. Now let's talk about financial behaviors a bit. So when it comes to financial behaviors, saving and spending practices are embedded behaviors that create habits over time. So if we think about those influences, our saving and spending patterns and practices are also observed as we observe those that we look up to financially, or look at society, or even what our financial education look like. These healthy habits create space for financial wealth, while the unhealthy habits create stress and slow financial progress. And so one thing that we learn with habits, this is just something that we're doing constantly, and it becomes a habit. So really it's affecting our mindset. And so these influences that we have really set up this thing that we like to call the financial ecosystem. Everything within our ecosystem, if we remember anything from science, everything in your ecosystem interacts with one another to create a thriving environment. And so there's this network of connections in the brain. Neurons communicate through a dense network of connections, just as organisms will within any ecosystem, and interact and communicate. And so this financial environment that we've created creates our money mindset. And when parts of the ecosystem are interrupted, it can create a chain reaction that could be facing something that was difficult financially, observing something that was difficult financially. It doesn't even have to be our own first firsthand experiences all the time. It could be just that observation as well. And mindset impacts our brain's way of processing information. This is often why perspective and processing, often why we can all be in a room and we can hear someone say something and just observe different parts of it because it's what that mindset is. So when we think about money, if you get $1,000 and I get $1,000 and what we're going to be focused on, of course, will be particular to what our finances are, but also to what our mindset is around money. That's why I've heard that money's burning a hole in your pocket, or, oh, you're so tight with your money, but really understanding that mindset lends to how we deal with money as well. And so I want to kind of underscore the part of the ecosystem being interrupted and it creating a chain reaction. One of those chain reactions that we don't necessarily think about is financial trauma. And so financial trauma is this emotional, relational, mental, and physical reaction or response that are triggered by financial stressors. Really being in that state of distress that's prompted by a difficult experience with money, and is otherwise known as financial PTSD. When I was reading about financial trauma, it really opened up the door for me to think about how those experiences impact us. Even if we had the experience 20 years ago, it doesn't mean it's not impacting us today. And so when we have these things of financial trauma, we're going to get into causes and impact and all of that. Just think back to, maybe the last situation where maybe a bill came in the mail or there was that call that was placed. So I'm the youngest of 12, lots of siblings. And just because I'm the youngest doesn't mean that I get to be the spoiled little brother. And so sometimes I have ATM wrote across my forehead and I have to really think through those things. That's a trigger for me. When one of my siblings asks me for money, I can feel my body having a physical reaction to it. So really, if you notice, hey, I notice that something's happening and it's related to finances and I start to feel automatically stressed about it, then a lot of the times that is linked to that financial trauma. And so let's talk about contributing factors and outcomes as it relates to financial trauma. First is going to be typical causes. Experiences where there's increasing debt, experiencing financial loss, having a history of poverty, financial discrimination, or even a lack of resources are all typical causes of financial trauma. And then we have the impact portion. So with impact, this could look like family dysfunction. Finances continues to be top number 1 or 2 for causes of divorce. And so that can create family conflict, also having that divorce that's negatively affecting children. Gambling, really viewing that quick fix kind of behavior that can lead to addiction. Mental health conditions as well. So having low self-esteem, depression, panic disorders, suicidal thoughts. We may not always think about it, but it can be related to money and in particular financial trauma. Next, we have those physical health conditions. With physical health conditions, a lot of times stress manifests itself physically in the body. And so long-term stress can release those hormones that wear down the body, really causing things like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and other health concerns as well. And then work impairment. And I think that one of these are all can be pretty severe, but one of the ones that can start a cycle as well is that work impairment. Impaired in the ability to do my best at work, to show up fully in doing what it is that I need to do because I'm so weighed down by that financial trauma. And so this can create that cycle of if I have times when I am having that work impairment and I'm not doing the best on my job and I get in trouble with my job, possibly losing my job, then that can create that cycle. And so when it comes to those, also the typical causes, I know for me, when I was talking in the last one, just about like how I have that feeling when it comes to my family, that experience comes from experiencing homelessness as a young kid and deciding that no one I knew that I could help would have to go through that experience. And so that's a lot to carry from, 6 or 7 years old. But it is something that feeds into, hey, I got to give this person this, I have to do this. And so really thinking through, am I experiencing some sort of financial trauma? What could be the cause? What that impact could possibly look like? And then let's talk about overcoming those barriers, changing our emotional response to finances. And that is very much so easier said than done. But that requires us to get a level of comfort with the knowledge that we have with our decision making, and so that we can start to change that emotional response to finances. Also, coming up with ways that we can calm ourselves and to be mindful about, hey, why am I feeling this way? What is going on? Having that self control, planning for the future. And planning for the future can be difficult when we're going through a situation that is immediate, right? But still finding time to have opportunity to plan for the future. Stop overextending yourself. My therapist tells me you can't pour from an empty cup. Okay, so how are we ensuring that our cup has something in it? And then acknowledging that you have the power. Although, sometimes it can be difficult, it can seem cloudy and all of those things, there is, light at the end of the tunnel. You do have the power to get to the end of the tunnel as well. It can be difficult to see sometimes, but you have to believe in yourself and give yourself grace for those things that maybe you didn't know that you're already learning. Then let's talk about looking at it in action. Okay, so when we have trauma or when we have things that are affecting our mental state, like stress and whatnot, we also have this cycle of purchasing that really plays into the mental. So financial education allows you to recognize what you should be doing with your finances, but these intrapersonal actions really help us to be happy in the moment. So we constantly see others' happy lives on TV, social media, and interacting with them. But let's look at how we see that happiness. So we see that happiness and we convince ourselves that we need the same. Okay. So I see this. Oh, yes, I need this. This is why psychology of marketing and things like that exist. And then after I've convinced myself I need the same, let me go ahead and indulge. After I indulge, that was just temporary. What is it? Dopamine hits. Happiness starts to fade. And then the guilt sets in. But because us as people, we don't like to feel that guilt. Well, now I'm looking for something else that can give me that happiness. And so maybe I'm looking to refill that happy feeling. So I indulge again. If you've ever had any of that buyer's remorse, and it wasn't necessarily something that was wrong with the item, but you started to think, what could I have spent this money on? What could I have done differently with it? So this is one of those, this is like the cycle of purchasing. And so how can we start to recognize when we may be in that cycle as well? Let's talk through breaking the cycle. So first, thinking to ourselves, what are 3 things you learned about money from someone who raised you? Whether it's just writing that down to this is really gaining that mindfulness as well. What are your biggest financial fears? A lot of times when we come up with our biggest financial fears, they may relate to those 3 things that we learned about money from someone that raised us. Also, how do you decide when to save versus spend? What is that metric for yourself when you're deciding where does this money actually need to go? because we know that the physical part of it is important, that it actually gets there, but the mental part of it is what comes first. And then what have been your most memorable experiences with money as well? And I think an extra one would be what has been, well, if we stick with memorable, whether it be good or bad, what has been those most memorable experiences with money? And so, like I told you all, I have begun to understand where that financial trauma for myself has come from when I look at what I experienced as a youth and how I'm constantly like, I don't want anybody to have to go through that and all of those things. And so I know that I have to make a conscious decision to actually break that cycle in my mind so that it doesn't continue to run me. And I actually am making decisions that are not only beneficial for those that I love, but beneficial for myself as well. Also, creating those financial checkpoints. Self-awareness is key to identify that unconscious emotional world that we each live in. Be present with your emotions. It's hard sometimes. Understand your past influence. Your past has an influence on you, whether we like it or not, whether we like what we observe people and how they spent money or not. Understand that it has an influence on us. And then give yourself grace. Hey, I didn't make a great decision. Well, am I going to dwell on it, or am I going to figure out how I can make a better decision in the future? If it can't be taken back, we can't, we got to kind of move on from it. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it allows you to give yourself grace so that you don't stay stuck in whatever it is that we may be thinking about. All right, so we're going to consider where we are at. So now we've looked at kind of emotions and finances and how those things relate. Really now considering ourselves and where we are at, and that's going to take us also into money and relationships. So with where you're at, what's your relationship like with money? Are you currently budgeting? Do you have some sort of spending plan that you've already outlined for yourself? I'll come back to that question in the middle. What are your long-term goals? And so I like that this kind of builds up to something, because are your current habits conducive to your goals? So we talked about those saving and spending practices become embedded behaviors and habits over time. Those unhealthy ones don't necessarily always leave the room for us to have that financial wealth. And then the healthy ones maybe are setting us up for that. But are these habits that I have day by day building to the goals that I have? If that is a no, then I know there needs to be some sort of retuning to those habits as well. And then who else is involved with your finances? This is a big one. Many of us don't always think through kind of how the people that are involved in our finances play into it, but it's important to do that because we can create plans around that as well. So let's go ahead and get into our money and relationships portion of the presentation. So when it comes to money and relationships, money can affect all relationships of all kinds quite significantly. If you have fell out with the family member because either you were on one end or the other of receiving the money or giving the money and we didn't get it back in time, or all of the myriad of things that can happen as it relates to money and relationships. People are often taught about money in different ways and have unique values related to money. And this affects a person's view of saving, spending, and investing. So remember, the example I gave earlier was that $1,000 may burn a hole in my pocket while you may decide, hey, I need to put this money up. This is an important thing to understand, especially when we're entering into any sort of money relationship with someone as well. When two people discuss money, they may have different views and habits related to money, which can lead to increased conflict. 34% of partnered Americans view money as a source of conflict in their relationship, and nearly 70% of Americans say that financial uncertainty has made them feel depressed, anxious, especially for Gen Zers and millennials. And so really that last one is on there just underscore how financial uncertainty can make us feel. And so with money and family, we want to try having a conversation with our family about money, discussing financial values, goals, and habits with one another in a comfortable and accepting atmosphere. Now, if we're not ready to really have a conversation and, not necessarily be judgmental or anything like that, then, maybe you take baby steps into the conversation. But knowing that you have to approach this with kind of a clean slate kind of mentality of understanding, how do you view money? How do I view money? From here, you can use what you have learned about one another to plan for future financial decisions. And then looking for ways to support family members who may be struggling. This could be monetarily or in other ways. Really, when it is possible, try referring those members to financial education resources so that they can start to learn more. And it's kind of something that is hard to think about, but what is going to be the return on investment should you decide to help this family member out? And it doesn't have to be a monetary return on investment. Is me helping this person out going to put them further in life? Is it going to help them to get out of the situation that they are in? What are their plans to stay out of that situation if it is going to? What does that look like? So really having those conversations. That way, we're not mad when we loan somebody some money and we see them on vacation the next week. I get it. I would be upset too. In fact, I am upset too. But when we can start to have these conversations, we know where that value set is. So we don't have to be so surprised by some decisions. And as far as money and friends, discussing money with friends can help you build stronger relationships and foster financial well-being. If you want to discuss money with friends, ensure that you are in a comfortable environment where you and your friends can feel safe to open up. So providing a safe space is important. Try starting with money conversations, maybe in general, and then moving over to really paying attention to your friend's body language and tone of voice so you know when to change the subject. And don't forget to have fun. Feel free to make jokes and let the conversation really evolve naturally. Discussing these financial dreams you have with your friends can also maybe help them to suggest ideas for how to work towards your goal as well. I know we're coming up on time here. For loaning money, a bank rate survey conducted in 2019 found that approximately 60% of Americans have loaned money to family or friends. However, 37% of those reported losing money, and 21% said that the loan had a negative effect on the relationship. We want to set boundaries so we are prepared if family or friends ask for money. Maybe this could be knowing ahead of time to know what you can afford to loan versus what you can't, and what the loan terms need to look like. When do you need your money back? This could also look like being prepared to say, I just can't do it. No is also a complete sentence. If you decide to loan the money, outline some sort of payment schedule if you expect them to pay you back. And also ensure you can go without that amount for a long period of time or maybe forever, depending on the loan terms that you set. Be understanding that you could not get that money back. And then remember that loaning money should not keep you from paying your own bills or reaching your own financial goal. You got to make sure your cup has something in it. You cannot dump all your contents out. All right. So next is money and partners. As it relates to financial abuse, this is a systematic behavior where one person tries to control another person's access to money. Often it's occurring between partners or other family members. Financial abuse costs the economy $15.6 billion every year, and it is the most common form of elder abuse. And then we have financial infidelity, which occurs when couples with combined finances lie to each other about money. For financial abuse, this includes using your money without permission, using your identity to gain access to credit and loans, refusing to allow you access to money without first going through them, hiding assets, not allowing you to work in order to bring in your own income, or marginalizing your feelings or opinions because they may earn more than you. Some warning signs of financial infidelity is your partner doesn't share household bills with you and is evasive when you ask, seems to be getting calls from collectors but dismisses your concern. You could possibly be getting calls as well. Not willing to really share what that credit looks like. Won't encourage you to attend meetings with a financial or planner or accountant. Bills may come in the mail for financial products that you didn't even realize your partner had, or that ones that were taken out in your name. And then you start to see items showing up on your credit report which you didn't apply for. So we now have a checklist. So when it comes to money and partners, prepare to talk. Choosing a calm, comfortable, and private place to have that communication. Determine what to share. So you don't have to share everything during your first conversation, but be open about what you're both interested in knowing and currently feel comfortable sharing. Eventually, you should know about debt loads, types of debt, credit scores, and all of those things, as well as net worth. Be open and honest. Avoid judgment and be honest with your partner. If needed, feel free to return to the conversation, but schedule it so you know when you're returning. Discuss those visions of the future. And then creating a game plan, coming up with specific steps you can take to work towards your future financial goals together. You can adapt this as needed. And then having routine check-ins as well, with that joint strategy in mind, setting those routine meetings so that you all can come together. All right. And then for putting it all together, understanding that emotions are a key factor in our finances. Psychologically, our past is a part of us. Learn to lift your circle without enabling them, which is a big one. And communication and transparency are very important. We can't expect to have an authentic relationship with individuals if we are not practicing that communication and transparency piece. All right. So, if you would also like to learn more about this financial trauma, as well as how we can create a tool belt of financial education and understanding to utilize, you can sign up for our Culture of Finances program. This is a diverse community outreach program focused on providing personalized financial education, addressing economic and social barriers, while also offering strategies to overcome financial fears. So this is a 12-week program that we go through where we really become like a family in talking about our experiences with money, and then how we can use our experiences and what we learn to build our financial journey to where we want it to go. So you can scan that QR code to go to our wait list and sign up there, or you can send us an email at thecultureoffinances@msufcu.org. And remember, we don't charge for any of our financial education, so do feel free to check that out. And then I thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I hope that you got some gems out of it. Also, if you can, feel free to scan that QR code under Take Our Survey to take our survey and tell me what you thought about it and if you'd like any other information. And then we have some additional resources, our financial education seminar series. We have videos that live on YouTube where you can check those out. And we also do live virtual events as well as some in-person ones. And I'd like to see if we have any questions. Let's see. Just looking through the comments to see if we have anything here. All right, see, we got some comments here talking about focusing on gratitude. Absolutely. Benji, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh,
Looks like we got one. Do you see that?
yes, I see it. What's the first step to change how you feel about money if you have experienced trauma with money? I love that question. And I think that first is recognizing that you have trauma with money, because many of the times we do not necessarily think about the fact that we have trauma with money. And I think that understanding where is the root of that as well, and how it impacts your emotions. So really thinking through it, it does definitely take a level of understanding about yourself, but really thinking through is that um, what is that experience, how does it affect your emotions, and then once I become cognizant of understanding of that this is financial trauma, or this is trauma, this is where I think that it comes from, this is how it affects me, I can start to gain mindfulness about that effect. When something happens and immediately that emotion comes into play, you can say, oh, I think I have an understanding of where this is, or what's going on. It doesn't mean that it's going to be cured overnight. Doesn't mean that it won't continue to impact you emotionally. But if we can get a level of mindfulness and awareness about it, then it allows us to be able to deal with said issue or those feelings. Thank you so much for asking that question. I just heard the music start. I had to look around and make sure I didn't do anything.
Just the chill vibes music, If any folks have any more questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. While we still have Devontae with us, we appreciate him and his expertise. We'll give another minute or two, and we can wrap things up. But hope everyone gained a lot from this. I certainly did. Topics you don't talk about a lot, you don't hear a lot about.
Very true. Yeah.
When we first got this, when we floated this idea for this webinar, I was like, financial infidelity, is that a typo? It's like rarely discussed. And I was like, oh no, this is a real concept. And we're like talking about this.
Yeah, things can get real uncomfortable with it.
Sure.
But I think that one of the things is, if we can just gain a level of comfort when it comes to discussing money, then it helps to make those issues kind of I shouldn't say easy to deal with, easier than if we just avoid it.
Sure. So for the folks watching at home, Devontae, do you have any final parting thoughts or words or places that they should go visit or Google before you go?
Absolutely. So if you'd like to check out more information just about MSU Federal Credit Union, I know that we're relatively new to the Illinois area, at least as far as physical presence goes. We have 10 branches in Illinois, but you can visit us to find out about financial products, but also for a lot of financial education lives on our website. We have things for youth as well for them understanding money, because we know that a lot of this starts when we are very young. So we want to figure out how we can create a financially empowered generation as well. So feel free to check out our Funtivity Zone, our seminar series, as well as Financial 4.0. And then Wallet Watch is our podcast, all about finances, professional development, things like that. And I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. We thank you so much for having you. We look forward to hopefully hearing from you more in the future. We could do another one of these sometime. For everyone watching at home or wherever you are, we thank you for spending your evening with us. And definitely stay tuned to the Treasurer's Office on Instagram and our newsletter, on all of our social medias. We do tons of great programs across the city to help you financially empower you, yourself, your family. So definitely stay in the loop. Actually, we got one more question for you. Let's pop this up.
Are there any hardship problems that can help with financial difficulty with the loss of a job? So we do have this financial company that we partner with called Spring 4. And Spring 4 is, hold on, do you still have the presentation up? I think I created a slide for it.
Yeah.
Here it is. So Spring 4 can actually help you with finding resources that are particular to your zip code. So if you were to scan this QR code, what it would take you to is a place that you could put your zip code in, and then you could be able to select those things that you're looking for from these 16 categories. That I counted that incorrectly, 14 categories. But they'll help you with seeing like, hey, what's particular to my area as well. And then I'm sure the city has a level of different resources as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate everyone being here. Thank you, Devontae. Thank you to Micah. Thank you to everyone who tuned on in. We hope to see you soon. Wishing you a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.